apparently ate the fruit. Although, if you read their own papers, the documents that Adam and Eve wrote, you would know that actually they never actually ate the fruit. You're not familiar with their own documents? They were found by so an archaeologist named Mark Twain found the original memoirs of Adam and Eve, and I highly recommend them. They're absolutely gorgeous. I do warn you, though, if you're going to read them, please wear one of those belts that you can use for wrestling, because you might hurt yourself. Protect yourself, because it's so funny. They brought the wrong fly. They only had one fly, apparently, and they had to go back for the female fly. They found it, fortunately. That was Noah. It was floating on a dead horse. So sorry, they're hilarious. Post death. Does it say post-mortem? Whatever. It was published after Mark Twain died because he was afraid of people rioting in the streets when they. Yes, Paul.
Struggling to connect this to Plato. How? I'm getting a little lost.
Well, the problem is your soul.
I think we can all agree to that.
And yes. How do we get back to that?
There could be one takeaway from today. What would it be? Good thing.
That's a whole other issue. Squirrel. There's a takeaway. No, your soul, in a sense, we can't say that Plato invented the soul, because obviously there's references to a soul. As I mentioned, the Egyptian pharaohs want their heart to be lighter than a feather so that their soul goes on into the next life, etc. And clearly the Hindu concept of soul is there as well, right? And Zarathustra, if you're familiar with Zarathustra or Zoroaster, the Persian religion, there's clearly a concept of soul. So this whole concept of soul has been with us, and Plato's dealing with it. By the way, we're still focused on it. I'm convinced that a contemporary view must account for the feeling that the soul is a lot more than just the physical body. The conference that they just had in Santa Fe on consciousness was dominated by people that are all arguing that our microtubules contain quantum particles that are in and out of existence in this particular here and now, but are continuing on in a non-local sense because they're quantum particles and they're interconnected with all other particles in the universe all the time. And your soul and your body and your water bottle and your computer are all made up of atoms, and atoms are made up of subatomic particles, and subatomic particles are made up of quarks, and quarks are quantum particles that are non-local, right? Non-locality. It's a real thing. So you can sense that your mother is going to call you. Feel like, I ought to call my mother. Ring! And you pick it up. Hi, Mom. How does that happen? How does Socrates in Greece Buddha in India and Master Kung in China all approximately about the same time come up with the same kinds of ideas. Multiple individuals invent something at the same time. I mean, there's all kinds of things to think about. Remember, I mentioned Stuart Hameroff talking about waking people up who have been anesthetized for an operation. They wake up and they report seeing the operation from above and describing it in a way that it would be impossible for anyone even down here to have observed. They could see it from up there somehow and know something going on in the next room. That happens enough that Stuart Hameroff, who's anesthetized thousands of people as a anesthesiologist, was absolutely convinced that there's something about consciousness that even though you administer the drugs that put the person asleep so that they're unconscious, are nevertheless, and how does that work, by the way? That's part of the question. How do those drugs actually decrease your awareness, right? And yet keep you alive? And yet it's obvious that something else is going on that enables you to actually have experiences even while you're under anesthesia that you can recall when you wake up. So the argument is this is that these are non-local quantum particles. Aha, the soul. Remember, it's eternal. Non-local particles exist throughout all of time and space at once, right? If you look at Einstein's this is basically an Einsteinian view. Here's you right this moment. It's always you right this moment. For each of you, although there are actually probably different spots, right? This is your past. This is your future. All of this exists at once from Einstein's point of view, right? The experience of time elapsing, according to that's crappy. Well, let me just explain it. I think it's chapter 4 of The Fabric of the Cosmos. Brian Greene, who you might have seen on lots of NOVA things and is a contemporary physicist, argues that time is like a frozen river. As an example, he says, take the CD, or DVD really, of the movie Gone with the Wind. Right? You have the DVD of Gone with the Wind. Notice that all of the bits or grooves in the disc are permanent, fixed. They're not moving. If you put that disc, however, into a DVD player, you will get the appearance of motion by the playback of that movie, right? Even though nothing on the disc is moving, it looks like it's moving. Brian Greene argues our mind is DVD player. All of time and space are already fixed, and our consciousness gives us the impression that time is moving. Each of us separately, right?
So time is, would you say that's like illusionary in a sense?
An illusion of consciousness, exactly. And it might not be the same. Your experience of the here and now will certainly seem like it's here and now to you, but it might not actually be concurrent with my experience of the here and now because it depends on your consciousness. You don't actually have proof that I'm an existing consciousness at this moment, except through your phenomenal experience of me, right? Is this fun? This is Plato. Still arguing over the soul being something different than the body. Now, in our contemporary sense, everything is energy in an arrangement. So matter is energy in a different state, right? So everything is spirit in this sense. Paul, you had another question?
I got one.
You're in it.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
So continuing with that
Right.
CD player and CD analogy, would that mean that we loop? Like, since we are,
I asked, there was a physicist that came to UAA and gave a lecture back when we had money. And his book was so he was here and gave a lecture, and there were like 300 of us in the library room. And at one point I said to him, there are some physicists like Brian Greene that believe that all of time and space is like a frozen river, and that our experience of time is a result of our consciousness. Right? So that actually nothing is moving except our consciousness gives us the impression that it's moving. And so I said to him, does this seem like a reasonable theory? And if so, how come nobody's studying how this would work? And he said to me, and by the way, I was really brave because, being never, fully tenure track or anything, because I'm a military retiree that wants to teach here, and they gave me term contracts way more than they were supposed to ever. But in any case, here I am, and I could be fired at any moment for being an idiot. And I was in this room full of PhD types, etc., and their wives usually, and I asked this question, which is dumb. And I asked him that, and he looked at me and he said, that's true. That is a current theory. And I don't know why no one studied it. So I was actually reassured that reading Brian Greene is not contrary to a contemporary physicist's opinion of theory on how do we explain everything. But coming from a Roman Catholic background where I believed I had a soul and that was the most important part of me, and so many contemporary scientists say it's Aristotle's way of viewing things. It's just the body, and by the way, when the body dies and you are no longer active, your soul is now the soul of a dead body. It's not doing anything, right? That sounds really depressing to me, because I like the idea of living for all eternity, even if I don't know quite how to explain it. And this theory gives me the opportunity to still believe that. And I'm with people that actually argue that's the only rational explanation for how quantum mechanics works, etc. Yes?
Maybe it's just the way it's being described, but it sounds like Aristotle is trying to just shoehorn this concept of the soul into his own thinking because people aren't going to listen to him if he doesn't believe in the soul. It's like what he's described.
They didn't listen to him.
Right, but more. I don't know. Everything that he is saying about how the soul is the embodiment, or the opposite of that, like the action of the body, could just be simplified by saying there is only this. We don't have to have the concept of the soul. Did he not go that way because it just wouldn't have been listened to, or did he?
We'll
have
talk
some-
about that on Wednesday. No, wait, what day is today?
Monday.
Monday, so Wednesday. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. It's great stuff. You've got to be here for Aristotle. It's really significant. And try to watch Aristotle's Lagoon prior to the meeting. There are some things I've mentioned here that I don't have. I should mention these.